Welcome to the Cosmic Business Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Pallas, and this podcast is for soulful entrepreneurs who want to harness the cosmic power of astrology to elevate their message, unlock flow, and attract their best clients ever. Join me every week and get excited to discover how you can use the energy of the cosmos to get the business breakthrough you've been waiting for. All right, today we're going to talk about fulfillment and happiness in your life and business. Because one of the amazing things about astrology is that it really can help you become happier. I mean, where does happiness actually come from? It comes from being fully seen, witnessed, and understood in this lifetime, right? It comes from having the environment, the work, the friends, the relationships and activities that feel truly fulfilling to you. But not everybody's version of happiness is the same. We're all searching for different things when it comes to our fulfillment. For one person, for example, playing a round of golf might be hugely relaxing, invigorating, fulfilling. For someone else, that's going to be the most boring few hours of their life. So you've really got to learn what is best for you, what is most fulfilling for you. And one of the ways to do that through astrology is to look at your moon sign, okay? And I want to read you a little excerpt from a book by Stephen Forrest, who's one of my favorite astrologers. He has this very pragmatic and yet poetic view of how astrology works. He says, astrology can help us in only three ways. It can vividly portray the happiest life available to us. It can tell us what tools we have available for the job and how to best employ them. And it can warn us in advance about how our lives will look when we're getting off the mark. From that point on, we must affirm that all choices lie in our own hands and that no planet or sign ever preordains a specific fate. Once those points have been made, we can listen to the message of the birth chart or we can ignore it. That is our own business. And even if we do choose to ignore it, life itself will get the same message across to us sooner or later. Okay, so to me, astrology is just about really speeding up the process. You're going to figure these things out about yourself eventually anyway. But what if you could have that insight right now? Because we spend so much of our lives searching for happiness and fulfillment. And really, the key to that is right there in front of us in our birth chart. And it's so important to feel fulfilled in our businesses and to know how to manage ourselves, manage our emotions in life and in business. Okay, so this is where your moon sign comes in. This is where we can find out the things we can stop doing and refocus our attention on the things we truly love and the places and people we want to be with. Okay, so if you've listened to my Working with the Moon episode, which was one of the earlier episodes, you'll know that in astrology, the moon represents our emotions. It represents our subconscious reactions, our instincts, and our intuition. Where the moon was when we were born represents who we are when we're at home. Okay, this is the person we are internally before we've had time to think about who we're trying to be or to filter ourselves in some way. It's showing us our needs and it gives us a lot of clues to help us come back to our sense of equilibrium. And the thing is, if we learn to understand and look after our moon or manage our moon, we will feel happier in all areas of our lives, including or especially our businesses. Okay, so what's your moon sign and how can you work with it? So this is where you're going to need to go back to your birth chart, and I will put a link in the show notes if you haven't already got a birth chart, so you can go and create a free one. You may already know your big three, your sun, moon, and rising. So we are talking specifically about your moon sign today. So forget what you know about your sun sign or your rising sign for this episode, because don't get me wrong, I see astrology as a very holistic process and we have to look at the whole birth chart because there are nuances and things at play that we really want to take into account. But if for a moment you can just, take a step back from all of that and look at yourself from the context of your moon sign only, I'm going to give you a rundown of all 12 moon signs. So, have a look at your chart And if you can think about, or rather feel into, what resonates with you from these little descriptions that I'm going to give you, that would be fantastic. And let me know, like actually, make a comment on Instagram or send me a message, send me an email. Let me know if these resonate with you. I would love to know your own personal experience and what you feel is a true reflection of your moon sign. That's a really helpful insight for an astrologer to have, but also it's really good self-awareness for you to practice. All right, now these are going to be short descriptions. I'm not going to go into super depth, but just have a think about yourself, have a think about the people that you know, that you might know their moon sign and go, oh, or you might not know their moon sign, but these things might resonate. I also want to just start this by coming back to the elements and the modalities as well. So if you have a moon in a fire sign, it's going to operate quite differently to a moon in a water sign. Okay, because fire signs have that fire, they have that independence, or they have that enthusiasm, they have a more expressive tone. Whereas water signs are much more emotional, they're much more fluid, they're much more internal, whereas the fire signs are more external, if that makes sense. The air moon signs, they are much more intellectual. There can be a more difficulty processing emotions for air signs because they are thinking their emotions instead of feeling them. And for earth signs, there can be kind of a little bit of stagnation in emotional processing as well. Earth signs can get a bit stuck when it comes to emotions. They can either repress them or they can have difficulty expressing them, or they can feel that kind of slower expression of emotion, if that makes sense. Doesn't mean that we all don't have really strong emotions. It just means that our ways of expressing and even feeling our emotions are different. If you have the moon in Aries, this is a very fiery, independent place for the moon. There is a real need to put yourself out there and follow the whims of the moment, like be a little bit spontaneous and enthusiastic and kind of just dive on in there. When you need to process your emotions, it's best for fulfillment and happiness that you do this through some sort of physical exercise, like some sort of intense cardio, maybe a run, something like that, because there's a lot of need to kind of move those emotions through the body and get them out. So this is a really interesting place for the moon to be. It's not its most comfortable place, Aries, but in that sign, there is this really strong need just to go out there and make your mark on the world and to express those emotions through physical activity in some way. So this is what I would say to you about increasing your fulfillment in your work, would be making sure that you have space for you to activate those emotions physically in some way. And also that through your work, you are actually allowing yourself to follow those whims, just put stuff out there with enthusiasm when the mood strikes you. That's really important for your fulfillment as well. Someone with the moon in Aries also probably really likes some sort of sport, some sort of, there's a bit of a competitiveness to the moon in Aries too. So that's another way to increase your fulfillment and happiness, is to really consider if there is a sporting activity or some other form of competition that you can get yourself involved into. So that's the moon in Aries. The moon in Taurus. Now, this is almost the opposite of the moon in Aries. These people love comfort. They love home. They love feeling good in their home and their workplace. There's a real need for security and habit, routine, that kind of thing. There's also a real need for beauty and, those Venusian things as well. Good food, good wine, good company. Pleasure is center stage in the life of a lunar Taurian, someone with the moon in Taurus. There's also a sensuality to these people. It's really important to honor the senses if you have the moon in Taurus. And, maybe if you're looking for more happiness and fulfillment in your life, you look to put things in place that not only allow you to have that comfort and stability in your workplace, or if you're working from home, your home office. You beautify your space, you make it feel really comfortable, really great for your senses. Maybe you have, some beautiful scented candles or incense or something like that, because as I said, the Taurian energy is very much about the senses. But also think about, having beauty around you, having art around you, and also allowing yourself that time to, go slow. Do things in that slow, sensual way that you love, and allow yourself to have activities that revitalize you, things that maybe pottery is something, that's it's tactile, it's artistic, but it's also tactile, something that's going to engage your senses. Those are some suggestions for the moon in Taurus. It's a very solid, comfortable moon. It's a really good place for the moon to be. It actually loves to be in Taurus. It's a very well-functioning moon, but you really need to make sure that you're incorporating all those lovely Taurian things into your life, those Venusian aspects, to really boost your happiness and fulfillment. Okay, the moon in Gemini. Now, people with this moon sign often have a million things on the go at once because they're so curious and they have this underlying restlessness, right? They want to do all the things. And I've spoken about Gemini energy before, particularly because we've got Mars in Gemini at the moment. There is this urge to do all the things and know all the things. And so that means that people with the moon in Gemini need more stimulation than others. They usually need to read a lot, talk a lot, and think a lot. And that's partly because this position of the moon is in an air sign. It's also in a mutable sign, right? So I spoke about the elements before: air, earth, fire, water, but also the modalities, which I've spoken about particularly in the rising sign episode, about, being fixed, cardinal, or mutable energy. And mutable energy is very changeable. It's very adaptable, but it's always moving. It's always looking for the next thing. There's a lot of variety required with mutable energy, okay? So that's what you really need to give yourself if you have the moon in Gemini. You also probably process your emotions in an intellectual way. That means you like to talk them out. So it's important for you to have people that you can talk things through with to process them. And it's important for you to give yourself mental stimulation if you have this moon sign. You really need to make sure you're incorporating plenty of mental stimulation into your workday and, allow yourself to be curious. That's really central to your happiness. Don't try to, when people say, oh, you need to focus, you need to do one thing at a time. Well, maybe that's not quite right for a moon in Gemini. Maybe the key to your happiness is to be able to have all of those things on the go at once. But you've got to find ways to soothe your busy mind as well. And I would say this for all the air sign moons. So that's Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. There is a real need to think about ways to still or quiet the mind. So meditation, breath work, that kind of thing is really important for these people. Moon in Cancer. The moon is actually at home in the sign of Cancer. The moon is the natural ruler of the sign. So people with this moon sign are often able to get in touch with the feelings and moods of others. It's a natural thing for them. And this is great, but it can also make people with the moon in Cancer a little bit moody, okay? Because they're constantly kind of flowing with their own emotions and everybody else's. So moon in Cancer people are looking for security and familiarity in what they do. That's how they create a sense of security in their life, is to find things that feel familiar, that feel peaceful. They need a bit of quiet. They need a bit of space from other people so they don't take on all of their stuff. They also have a little bit of difficulty with boundaries because of that watery energy, and that can make them a little bit resentful. So you've got to be really careful if you have the moon in Cancer to create these safe, quiet, and nourishing spaces for yourself to work and to live, and to really create some more security in your own personal boundaries as well. That will make you feel happier and more fulfilled if you don't feel put upon by other people and other people's emotions. Okay, that's actually key to Moon in Cancer's happiness. So, people with the Moon in Cancer love to be at home. They love, the idea of, reading a great book by the fire. They love to be with their family. They love to connect with their ancestry potentially or their history. And they have often great memories for, those historical things in their families or things like that. So, maybe people with the Moon in Cancer, one of their favorite things might be to sit down and watch Outlander or some great historical romance. But, these are the ways that you can, really boost your happiness and fulfillment. What does your moon want? So that's the Moon in Cancer. Moon in Leo. Now, this is really interesting. Moon in Leo people are really comfortable being in the spotlight when they're at home or when they're with family and friends. They're not so comfortable when they're out there in public. It's really like they're the entertainer or the comic of the family. Everybody in their friendship circle will, they'll be the person that everybody goes to lighten the mood, or they'll probably be the connection point in their friendship circle as well. They are an entertainer by nature in their small family or friend group. And their overwhelming desire is to be loved and cared for and also to be acknowledged. That's why they are the entertainer in their group, because they love that acknowledgement. They love being the funny person. And think about heart chakra energy for Moon in Leo people. They want to feel that love. They have a strong sense of pride. And so if they don't feel like they're getting the love that they need, or their pride has been damaged in some way, they can have big emotional outbursts. But that's very, very much limited to their home, right? It's not necessarily a public outburst. But, that can really be triggering for people with the Moon in Leo. So it's really important for you, if you've got the Moon in Leo, to find safe spaces where you can be that expressive, that funny friend, where you have people around you that really love and admire you and can give you that acknowledgement that you so desire. It's also a very creative place for the moon. So, it may be that you're a creative dresser. It may be also that you use that creativity through, the way you entertain your family and friends. It's really important for you to be able to express yourself. And in business, this is also important. If you have the Moon in Leo, it might not be such an outwardly expressive thing in your business brand. It's a more internal, like how you deal with your clients, what people really come to you for, and how you get that kind of sense of acknowledgement through your work as well. Okay, the Moon in Virgo. If you have the Moon in Virgo, it's likely you make sure the details around your home and place of work or business are all ironed out. Like, you like to take care of things. You like to run errands. You like to make sure those bills are paid. And you probably even like decluttering. Like, you'll go, okay, today I'm going to work on this drawer or this room of the house or the office or whatever it is. This is actually part of what fills your cup. I know that it sounds like hard work, but part of what soothes a Moon in Virgo, what brings more happiness and fulfillment to a Moon in Virgo, is being useful. And so those little errands and those activities like decluttering are actually very, very soothing to your soul. And it will bring you more happiness if you embrace that. It's really kind of nourishing to a Moon in Virgo to be doing things, to be keeping a little bit busy. Like, don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed with all of the things. And that's why it's important for you to build in simple routines that you can follow each day and, a little bit more structure around the busy work that you might be doing. But following those routines, making sure the details are covered, making sure those little jobs are done, will make you feel good. And it's important for you to know as well that it can be difficult for a Moon in Virgo to show emotion. You might prefer to show that emotion or your gratitude or your appreciation or whatever it is through your actions instead of through those emotional displays. So that whole idea of how can you be of service, how can you be helpful, And I know that that can sound counterintuitive to self-care, but actually if you find that soothing, if you find it soothing for you to be helpful, for you to get those jobs done, for you to make sure the details are taken care of, then build that into your days. And you will find that you have that more fulfillment and happiness in your day-to-day work life. And, maybe it even gives you more fulfillment in your personal life as well. Okay, the moon in Libra. Now, people with the moon here have a strong need for partnership in life and even in business, because this is what helps them create a sense of security. But the partnership has to be harmonious. Otherwise, those lunar Librans can get very stressed out, because harmony is ultimately what they're seeking. That's what makes them feel good. Okay. And when I say partnership in business, I don't mean that all people with the moon in Libra have to have a business partner. That's not the case at all. I have the moon in Libra and I do not have a business partner. But what I do have is a partnership with, for instance, my virtual assistant. We have a really beautiful, harmonious partnership, the way that we work together on the content and the things in my business. And that has actually given me a whole lot more fulfillment and happiness in my business, because I know I have that other person to bounce ideas off and to work with in harmony. So it's difficult for Moon in Libra people to work on their own completely. Okay, the moon in Libra also appreciates and needs to be surrounded by beautiful things. It's another Venus-ruled sign, things they consider beautiful, right? There needs to be a sense of harmony in their environment as well. So you really need to make sure that your workspace or your home space or whatever it is that, wherever you're trying to create that happiness and fulfillment, that you are creating a beautiful, harmonious space for yourself. And again, this is an air sign moon, so prone to a bit of anxiety, a bit of overthinking, that kind of thing, a bit of a restless mind. It's important to find activities that can help quiet the mind, bring you back to peace. As I talked about with the Gemini moon, thinking about, meditation, breath work, that kind of thing as well. Okay, moon in Scorpio. This is an interesting one. This is a tricky place for the moon, but also a really inspiring, in my opinion, place for the moon as well. So the moon in Scorpio naturally seeks out emotional intensity. So people with this moon have a deep-seated need for transformation and rebirth, and they often end up in situations that test their emotional resilience or stir up some sort of emotional excitement in their life or in their business, right? So in order to deal with this, in order to create more happiness and fulfillment in your life, self-awareness and acceptance of this part of yourself is probably key. It's probably the best way to handle or to manage this deep need for emotional drama. You have to be aware that this is a part of you, right? It's also important, if you have the moon in Scorpio, that you know that doing things halfway or having shallow, superficial relationships is just not for you, right? Lunar Scorpios want all or nothing. They're all in relationships. They're in for all of it. They're not here to talk about the weather. They want to know all of your deep, dark secrets, but also, they're prepared to share theirs as well. Intimacy is hugely important to people with the moon in Scorpio. So when you're using your enormous power for intimacy and honesty and, transformation, rebirth, that's when you're at your happiest. And that's also when you're at your most compelling to other people, to other clients or to other colleagues, to people in your life, that kind of thing. So, you can really work with that moon in Scorpio. It is not the easiest place for the moon to be, but at the same time, it has a real strength there if you use it in those powerful ways and you accept that part of yourself as well. That will help you to be more happy. That will help you to feel more fulfilled. And if you can use that in your business in some way, make that part of what you do, that could be key. All right, moon in Sagittarius. So people with the moon in Sag have a really big need for freedom and space, personal freedom and space. So they're really happy and easygoing as long as they don't feel like they've been caged in any way. And that could be physically, as well as they don't feel trapped by their business. They don't feel trapped by their life in some way. They also love open spaces and roomy, bright environments as well. So if this is you in your workplace, you don't want to be feeling claustrophobic. That is not going to make you happy. You need to be in a really nice open space to work at your best, to feel your most fulfilled. And many people with this position of the moon are also quite outdoorsy. So you might want to build some of that into your work, into your life, into your work-life balance, being able to get outdoors, being able to explore new places. You also have this great love for changes of scenery, okay? And you don't really love routine. You don't really love being in the same place every day. So you might want to think about how you can change up the location of your work, or how you can get out, make time for adventures during your week, during your working week even, that kind of thing. The beautiful thing about people with the moon in Sag is that they just believe everything's going to work out. They're very optimistic, and that means they don't make these really detailed plans. They probably prefer to wing it. And that's great for a moon in Sag person. It can be a little difficult for other people who are working with them who don't have the moon in Sag. So that's something to be aware of. People with the moon in Sagittarius, really adaptable. Again, this is mutable energy. So really easy to change, to go with the flow, that kind of thing. And they're generally just, on the go. They're doing stuff all the time. They're also hungry for knowledge. They're seekers of wisdom. They're seekers of new experiences and having their minds expanded in some way. So this is part of the key to your happiness and fulfillment. If you have this moon sign, is to keep on expanding yourself, keep on expanding your mind, keep on expanding your experiences. And, that will really help you in life and business. And because of this, you love teaching and learning, and you can become these really wonderful, inspiring teachers. And that could be part of that fulfillment and growth for you as well. Okay, moon in Capricorn. This is another tricky place for the moon. That's because it's opposite the sign of Cancer where it rules. So the moon is in detriment in this position in Capricorn. However, again, just like the moon in Scorpio, you can use the power of that moon really effectively in your life and business. You just need to be aware of it. Self-awareness, again, is key for people with the moon in Capricorn. Now, being useful and productive is a basic need of a person with the moon in Capricorn. You also have a strong desire for clear boundaries and realistic goals. There's a real realism to a moon in Capricorn person often. You're often looking for safety and security in everything you do. Remember, Capricorn is a sign ruled by Saturn, and there's a lot around boundaries, around authority, around tradition, that kind of thing. And also planning. Capricorn moon people are really good at planning, at thinking about the future, at protecting their interests for the long term. And that's all amazing stuff. The issue with the moon in Capricorn, again, it's an earth sign. Again, the moon is in its detriment here, is the difficulty in expressing emotion. And, yes, you can, because it's Capricorn energy, you can master your emotions. You can become a master of your emotions. But you need to understand that in order to have happiness and fulfillment in your life, you have this real need to feel worthwhile and kind of needed in the world in some way, right? There's this need for respectability. There's this need, again, for acknowledgement in a different way to the Leo moon. And people with the moon in Capricorn also put a real value on things being tangible and real, on things having integrity and having respect, right? Feeling that respect from others. So if you have the moon in Capricorn, you need to make sure that you are dealing with things in an integrous way, having integrity in dealings with people, feeling that respect from people. That's going to actually be key to your happiness and fulfillment. And in order to feel that respect from people, you need to act with integrity, right? And then it kind of has that feedback effect, right? People see you acting with integrity, they have respect for that. So that's key, part of the key to your happiness and fulfillment. It's also part of the key to that is making sure that you do become useful and productive, and you do see yourself as useful and productive, and you make sure you build that into your life, business. You're always checking back in on your boundaries and your goals and that sort of thing. That does make you feel fulfilled, to know that you are moving forward in a productive and in a goal-oriented way. That will make you feel good. Just acknowledging again, you do have a need for respect, do have a need for acknowledgement. That is okay. Honor those needs, allow yourself to feel respected, allow yourself to feel acknowledged. Okay, Moon in Aquarius. Moon in Aquarius people often have this feeling of being different. They are really quite sociable people. They love having friends. They love being part of a community or a bigger circle, but they're often loners at heart. So people with the Moon in Aquarius will do their best to be the most unusual or unique person they can be. And that's because they have this inner sense that they are different. And they have this desire to be independent as a person, right? And that's no matter what their age. That can be from, very young to very old. There's a sense of needing to be independent, needing to be unique, needing to kind of shock or do something unexpected. That doesn't have to mean that they're these radical personalities. That can mean that, they grew up in a really conservative household and they rebelled against that. I'll give my mum as an example. She has the Moon in Aquarius. She grew up in a very traditional Greek Australian household where she wasn't allowed to go out with anyone who was not Greek Australian. And she married a very Anglo man, which was very against what her family wanted. And that was her rebelling against what was expected of her in her own way. The marriage didn't work out in the end. However, that was her showing her rebelliousness as a Moon in Aquarius person. So the people with the Moon in Aquarius really need to be able to show that uniqueness in some way. Even though Aquarius is a fixed energy, that fixed modality, it's still an air sign. So it does need, it does tend to intellectualize feelings and also tends to overthink, can be prone to worry, again, needs to find ways to calm the mind, either through meditation or breath work, that kind of thing. But people with this moon sign really need to have their own space and freedom to be themselves. However strange and unusual that may be, they really need to have that sense of, it's okay to be me. And, even though they have that fixed energy, there is still that kind of sense of being really different in some way. Okay, Moon in Pisces people. Now we're at the final sign, Moon in Pisces. Sorry if you're a Moon in Pisces and you always have to wait till the end when you have any Pisces sign placements. Okay, Moon in Pisces people can put themselves into anybody's shoes with ease. There's this sense of being able to shift and change and move with the emotions. So in a good way, this gives them amazing compassion and love for others. But the kind of downside for this moon is that they, again, lack boundaries and they can easily lose themselves in the suffering and in the emotions of others. So Moon in Pisces people have a need to feel things out and rely on their intuition. It just doesn't work if they try and do things in an intellectual way. They're not an air sign moon. This is a water sign moon. It's very much about feeling the feelings, okay? So allowing yourself to really feel through your intuition, feel through your body potentially, allow yourself time to dream, time to imagine, just allow yourself time to be absent-minded. That's okay. If you have the Moon in Pisces, that's part of who you are. And, build that into your life and business in some way, that you are going to be a little bit, maybe slower, a little bit more dreamy. You got to have that time and space to daydream. That's part of it. But you also need to be aware of your ability to be overwhelmed by others. And so you need to give yourself space to be alone with yourself, even though you love to be around people. You need to also honor your own space, your own boundaries, and that will give you more happiness and fulfillment if you can understand that part of yourself and not allow yourself to be overwhelmed by life or overwhelmed by others' emotions, others' stuff. Okay, so that is all 12 moon signs. I would love to hear whether yours resonates with you and what you're going to do to manage or look after your moon. Now you know. Because the truth is, if you don't look after your moon, well, things can get a little uncomfortable, and not just for you, for the rest of us as well, especially at this time of year when stress and emotions are heightened. So take care of yourself, take care of your moon. Let me know what you think about all of this, and I will be back again very soon. Thanks for joining me on the Cosmic Business Breakthrough. If you'd like to learn more about what I do, head to sophiapalace.com or follow me at Sophia Palace over on Instagram. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful and share it with a few friends. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.